Not long, Joe Biden will be down in Lower Manhattan. He's traveling also to Westchester County today. He's going to give a speech about the debt ceiling, but it's a multi-purpose trip. He's going to meet with congressional leaders about the debt crisis coming up later this week. But Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, she's now warning everyone that the United States could run out of money as soon as June 1st. What would that look like? Well, Social Security payments could be stopped. They always say U.S. service members would not be getting paid. The stock market would most likely hit a serious decline, and interest rates, well, they could go up even higher than they already have risen. Now, millions of jobs could be hanging in the balance, and at this hour, both sides are far from a deal. They're all scaring us. Take a listen.
Nothing has changed since then. The only thing that has changed is the House has raised the debt ceiling and passed the bill.
The solution is between the one person in America who can sign a bill into law and the Speaker of the House.
There are large differences between the parties. If you look at what President Biden had proposed and you look at what Speaker McCarthy has proposed, they're very, very different.
There's a lot of politics, posturing, and gamesmanship, and it's going to continue for a while. But I am squarely focused on what matters.
So that right there was President Biden at that news conference. And joining us now for more on that, some pretty extraordinary things we saw in that news conference. Our chief White House correspondent James Rosen now joins us. James, what did we learn during that news conference last night?
Well, John and Bianca, good afternoon. Speaker McCarthy, who has always wanted to tie the hike in the debt ceiling to cuts in federal spending, told reporters at the White House last night that he saw no movement by President Biden, who has insisted all along on a clean hike to the debt ceiling, one with no strings attached. The two men agreed to meet again this coming Friday. That's in sharp contrast to the 97 days that separated their first two meetings. They also agreed that their staff aides should meet every day. Asked a few moments ago on Air Force One if those staff meetings have commenced, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre had no real answer. Beyond that, the two men's accounts of their meeting diverged sharply.
But I was very clear with the president. We have now just 2 weeks to go. If Chuck Schumer could pass something, we'd go to conference right away and solve that. But I don't think Chuck Schumer can pass anything. They haven't dealt with it.
All I asked him inside was, if you're not going to cut any of those programs, and you're saying the cut is 22% across the board, then you're going to have to cut a hell of a lot more with the programs that are left. No, we're not going to do that either. I'm not sure. I don't think they're sure exactly what they're proposing.
Amid this debate over the debt ceiling, President Biden has been accused from time to time of conflating the debt and the deficit, engaging in a kind of sleight of hand for accounting purposes. We got last night perhaps the clearest example yet.
In my first 2 years, I reduced the debt by $1.7 trillion. No president's ever done that. As I said, I've already cut the deficit by $1.7 trillion in my first 2 years in office.
So again, the same sentence, one saying he cut the debt by $1.7 trillion in his first 2 years in office, the other attributing that to the deficit. There was one moment when Mr. Biden seemed displeased by the text that was written for him by his speechwriters, a certain lack of clarity, which he attempted to resolve with some editing out loud on the fly. Here's the chief executive. He spoke so softly in such a low whisper that I believe we've added subtitles.
According to Moody's, nearly 8 million Americans would lose their jobs, and our international reputation would be damaged in the extreme. The last part is me, international. Moody's did not say the last part about damage in the extreme.
Finally, the president was asked if the U.S. is ready for the surge in illegal immigration that is expected with tomorrow's expiration of Title 42, the Trump-era pandemic rule that enabled swifter deportations.
The answer is it remains to be seen. We've gotten overwhelming cooperation from Mexico, but it remains to be seen. It's going to be chaotic for a while.
It's going to be chaotic for a while. Asked again on Air Force One moments ago what a while might mean, what kind of time frame the American people can expect the border to be chaotic. The White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre declined to answer. Published reports say that in addition to the 1,500 troops that the Biden administration is dispatching to the southwest border, they're also making plans to deploy some 24,000 law enforcement personnel and 1,100 individuals listed as processing coordinators. And again, I know Bianca mentioned it earlier, but there is now an NBC News report that alleges, on the basis of 3 unidentified sources, that part of the Biden administration's planning for the expiration of Title 42 is simply to allow large numbers of migrants to be released into the United States without enrolling them in the usual tracking programs. John and Bianca.
Yeah, if true, that is appalling to hear. James Rosen, keep us posted on that development. Great to see you. Thanks so much. All right, let's talk more about President Biden. Welcome in GOP strategist Joe Pinion, joining me here on set in New York. Joe, great to have you here.
Good to be here, my friend.
All right, so let's talk about what we're going to see Joe Biden do today. There's supposedly, well, we know this for a fact, there's a border crisis right now, and the debt ceiling is supposedly a big crisis, but he has time to come to New York today and tell America that he's talking about the debt ceiling and then sneak away to a fundraiser, a $25,000 a plate fundraiser tonight. How can we take these crises seriously if this is what the president is doing?
Well, it's very clear the president doesn't take the crisis seriously. In fact, again, this is a proliferation of the failure by design politics that Joe Biden has brought us after he quoted Abraham Lincoln and promised to unify this nation. So if he is concerned about the fact that we are looking at people in the military not getting paid, if he is concerned about the fact that the full faith and credit of the American dollar is in many ways the strength and the backbone of American dominance around the globe, he should not be in New York. He should be down speaking with Speaker McCarthy. He should be down in D.C. trying to get Senator Schumer to see if he can get something done in the Senate. Apparently, it is now easy to just say MAGA extremists have hijacked our democracy instead of acknowledging the reality that the only extreme thing happening is that they have decided it is our way or the highway.
All right, let's talk about Janet Yellen. Now, she is also sounding alarms, telling everybody that the country's going to run out of money by June 1st. And they're negotiating. So it seems like when you listen to what Chuck Schumer said in James Rosen's package, they continue to want to dig in their heels because they do not want any cuts in spending. The difference is Republicans have actually put forth a plan that cuts spending but raises the debt ceiling. So they have a choice. They could end this quote-unquote crises today, right now, if they wanted to.
Well, their position is, on some rights, correct, right? That the debt ceiling is money that we have already spent, that we should have that conversation separate from the actual spending. The problem with that is that any person knows that if you're actually dealing with the fact that we have an economy that is not working, if you're dealing with the fact that we printed $6 trillion of our money without actually dealing with the fact that we now have to actually carve back also some of that money, you end up in a situation where most of the people find themselves, really struggling every single day. So I think those are the core issues that people have to be focused on, making sure that we actually have a plan to get the economy back on track. They don't have a plan to get the economy back on track. They have a plan to fearmonger and say that we're going to cut Social Security and cut Medicare, things that are not included in any of the plans put forth by McCarthy.
You got the blinders on. Joe, great to see you. Great to be with you as well.
Thanks so much.